caro António Calçada de Sá, Presidente da Direção do Conselho da Diáspora Portuguesa, Mr. Minister of Foreign Affairs and Minister of State, Paulo Rangel, Mr. Mayor of Cascais, Carlos Carreiras, Mr. Dean of Nova, Professor Pedro Oliveira, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. Apparently, one day, when Mozart was playing, the Emperor of Austria, Joseph II, told him, "It's beautiful, but it has too many notes." And Mozart said, "No, it's not too many notes, exactly the notes needed." It was for the abduction of the Syrian, a great opera by Mozart. And today, when I see what's happening in the world, sometimes I think there are too many events. Every day there are news, sometimes tragic or very worrying news. It seems there has been an acceleration of history. So many events that it's hard to deal with them. It's hard to process them and to assess them. That's why I thought today, instead of making my usual considerations about what's going on in the world, that I'm always invited to do by my good friend António Calçada de Sá, I thought to focus on one issue, and tomorrow, if there is time, on another occasion, we will discuss more about geopolitics. And the issue I've chosen to discuss today with you in these opening remarks is health, public health. That's a very concrete issue that is so important for Africa, and it is so important for European-African cooperation. As you know, or at least some of you know, I'm the chair of the board of Gavi, the Global Alliance for Vaccines. And that's why I want to expose to you today briefly some of our priorities, namely related to Africa. We invited, and they will participate, several ministers of health from Africa. They are not yet here. They will come later today and tomorrow. So I really want to thank them for joining us and discuss the issues of health with us. But let me tell you something about Gavi, the organization I am proud to chair. For over 20 years, Gavi's unique model of public-private partnership has brought together countries, technical agencies, donors, civil society, and the private sector to pursue the goal of expanding access to vaccines. Vaccines is the point of entry in the public health system in our countries, and it is quite clear that investment in vaccination immunization is the most effective way of investing in public health for how many lives we can save, and also creating resilience in children to resist to all kinds of infectious diseases. This unique alliance, Gavi, an alliance between mainly World Health Organization, UNICEF, World Bank, Bill Gates Foundation, and the governments of donor countries and implementing countries, this unique alliance has enabled us to fight global crises, from the financial crisis of the 2000s to the COVID-19 pandemic. Our innovative approach to financing has enabled us to support the vaccination of over 1 billion children over the past 24 years, saving 17 million lives in the process. The overwhelming majority of those billion vaccinations have taken place in Africa, helping to build the foundations of health and prosperity for generations to come. And today we have encouraging news to share. Just now, the latest WHO and UNICEF estimates of national immunization coverage, released just today, show that the African region has increased immunization coverage, even in the face of growing populations and continued efforts to rebuild health systems following the pandemic. The proof is plain to see. Vaccines and vaccination are changing lives and changing countries for the better. Thanks to the power of immunization, the number of childhood deaths from vaccine-preventable diseases has fallen by 70% since 2000 in Gavi-supported countries. It's indeed an incredible achievement. But we want to go further still. Last month, more precise on the 20th of June, I had the honor of co-hosting in Paris with President Macron of France and the President of the African Union Commission, the Global Forum for Vaccine Sovereignty and Innovation in Paris. Several presidents attended, President of Botswana, of Ghana, of Rwanda, of Senegal, and many ministers of health, including some that are going to participate in our forum today and tomorrow. This forum in Paris last month was a joint initiative between Gavi, the government of France, and the African Union, another example of the spirit of collaboration between our two continents. The forum was our first opportunity to set out Gavi's plan to accelerate its impact between 2026 and 2030 by reaching more children and more vaccines faster than ever before. We are asking from the donor community $9 billion for the next 5 years. Already in that forum, we were able to raise $2.4 billion. And we expect, when we organize the pledging conference later this year or beginning of next year, to come to the $9 billion. It took us 2 decades to vaccinate our first billion children. We want to reach the next billion in half the time, so we are going to accelerate. We are going to double the number of children we vaccinate in the same time. Last year, we saw the largest rollout of HPV vaccines in history. As you know, vaccines against cervical cancer, and that is especially important for girls, young girls. This year, we are maintaining that momentum, protecting millions of girls from cervical cancer. After a successful pilot program, Gavi's support has been instrumental in rolling out the first malaria vaccine in African countries throughout 2024. Malaria, a development that would have seemed an impossible dream just decades ago. For all those of you who come from Africa or who know Africa, you know how important this issue of malaria is for the well-being of our fellow Africans, but also for the economy in general in those countries. A second malaria vaccine, R21, its name, will be rolled out precisely from today. It's been launched today globally, helping us meet the high demand from Gavi-supported countries. Vaccines are becoming a key part of comprehensive national strategies for malaria control, with other crucial interventions such as bed nets, supported by our closer partners, the Global Fund, that can truly turn the tide against one of humanity's oldest enemies. Speaking of old enemies, the tantalizing prospect of a new vaccine for TB, for tuberculosis, another scourge of humanity since antiquity, is a distinct possibility before this decade is out. And as the COVID-19 pandemic showed, mRNA vaccine technology holds the promise of new generations of vaccines that can be rapidly adapted as diseases evolve and new threats emerge. Few avenues of human endeavor and innovation promise as much for humanity over the coming years as immunization, and Africa will play an ever greater part in realizing this potential. Through Gavi's AVMA, it is African Vaccine Manufacturing Accelerator, we are sending a clear signal that African nations will be authors of many of the innovations in immunization that are yet to come. We first announced AVMA, we launched AVMA in December last year at our Gavi board meeting in Ghana. Last month, we were proud to launch AVMA officially, precisely in the conference in Paris that I mentioned before. And in fact, I'm very happy with the results because we were already able to gather $1.4 billion for that initiative. And we are now starting, and it's happening. So it's happening. Now we have, for instance, in Rwanda, we are already having the first manufacturing capacities for mRNA vaccines. So this is a very promising sector. And I'd like finally to say a word about Portugal, because I have here the foreign minister and I cannot escape this moment. First of all, to thank Portugal for the support given a fight against COVID-19. Portugal gave 1.2 million directly from the budget, euros, and also 1.7 in contributions from some private companies from the private sector. And we'd like to ask Portugal. I already had the honor and the pleasure to speak with my good friend Paulo Rangel about this program, to keep that commitment, because we believe it's very important that also in an area that is so important for Africa, Portugal, that we always like to think about Portugal as one of the greatest supporters of Africa in Europe, to keep its commitment. It's one very important field of cooperation between Europe and Africa. There is nothing more important than cooperation that helps us save lives. And this is exactly the case. Thank you very much for your attention, and all the best for this forum. Thank you.